regarding the 4 steps. Each one have the 4. So it's 16 steps.
Yeah.
Like breathing. The book, some say the long and short is like inhale from outside longer, the air, but the other book say long it means like you have deeper breathing. So which one do you think is more close to the content?
I think that what's really meant here is you breathe completely naturally. Only watch the breath, and sometimes it's long and sometimes it's short. And when you begin, it tends to be longer, but it's still sometimes longer and sometimes shorter. And then as you sit and your mind becomes quiet, then the breath tends to become shorter too. But I think what it really means is you're just watching as the body breathes completely naturally, and you just watch. So.
The third one, regarding the training self, the entire body, a book say you have inhale, exhale, there is beginning, middle, and pulse. And some book, I read it, I say like, it's here, here, and here. But is that okay too?
Well, you see, when you begin, if you focus on, when you begin, your mind moves all over everywhere, right? Your attention, and so you're learning, first of all, to make your attention still. And so to make your attention still, you pick one thing to pay attention to. And what happens as your mind begins to be trained, and so it stays still. So, this is your breath at your nose, and you focus on that, and your mind stays there. Right? So when your mind starts to become still, you're still aware of other things, right? So naturally, you're watching the breath. Now you start to become aware of more and more of the whole body. And so as your awareness expands, you can train yourself to have better, clearer, stronger awareness by allowing yourself to be aware of the breath in the whole body, aware of the whole body as you breathe in and breathe out. And I think that's what that refers to. If you do this on purpose, 2 things happen. One is to be aware of the whole body rather than just one small area. Your mind must become much sharper and clearer and stronger. So that's one thing, is you make the power of your mindful awareness increases. You can do this. The second thing that happens is your mind becomes fully occupied because there's all these different sensations in the body. The mind is fully occupied. So now there's very, very little opportunity for thoughts or being aware of stray sounds or things like that. So it makes your focus much more stable and stronger. So when you practice meditation, at some point you naturally come to a place where you sense that your awareness is expanding beyond just here or just here. When that happens, then you deliberately let that happen to increase the power of mindful awareness and to decrease the amount of distractions that are entering into your mind.
Before that, we need to pay attention to the beginning, middle, and the...
Yes, before that.
Okay.
Before that. Because if you're not paying attention to the beginning and the middle and the end and the pause and the beginning and the... then you're not going to know if it's long or short.
So the whole body means include the beginning, middle, and the pause and the
whole body.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first 4 regarding the body, the first one, like I will breathe out, calming the bodily fabrication. Because you want to calm, you need to say, I'm going to calm it.
Well...
Or naturally.
Yes. It happens... It does. It happens naturally. Because as your mind becomes calm, then that's going to really affect the body. But if you're sitting, the body's already not moving. By the time you've been meditating long enough to come to this 4th one, when you sit, your body is already not moving. But you still have a lot of feeling in your body. You feel, my hips or my knee back, like that, So the body is not completely calm and settled. And so you let the calmness that you've developed in your mind pervade the body, And when that happens, you know that you are succeeding when you sit there and you start to feel the stillness in the body. The body's very comfortable. And the feeling like, oh, I need to move my leg, and oh, I need to do this, that goes away because your body feels very, very still and comfortable and calm. And when that happens, then you know, this is what calming the bodily fabrication. Now my body is, I can sit here for 2 hours. I move. I don't want to move. There's no, no restlessness in the body.
So this one here is only express your situation. Doesn't mean you needed to do something, right?
Well, except that what you need to do, you train yourself to do this, which means that you have to, while you're still feeling the restlessness in the body, you have to bring the calmness of the mind to it. And so when somebody's meditating and they're saying, well, when I sit, after a little bit, my legs always start to bother me, and I feel like I need to move my leg. Okay, and so as a meditation teacher, you say, okay, don't be in such a hurry to move your legs. Instead, when your legs start to feel that way, put your attention in and just observe it, and let that same calm mind just observe it. If you reach a point where you have to move, then move, but move very slowly with mindfulness, and maybe next time you won't have to move. And if you practice in that way, after a while the body becomes very calm. So you do have to do something.
Sometimes she feels so itching, cannot bear the itching, so still needed to bear it or cannot move it, or you can move it.
Okay. First of all, you can see that itching, that means bodily formations are not calm yet. So what you do is to, first of all, put your attention on the itching and just watch it. Just meditate on the itching rather than moving right away. Move right away, it'll just keep on happening. It won't ever change. But if you meditate on it, sometimes what happens is it will go away, and then you can go back to your breath. Sometimes it won't go away, but it'll just, it won't bother you anymore. And so then you can go back to the breath. So sometimes it won't go away, but you watch it as long as you can, and if it comes to a point that you know that, okay, I know I'm going to move, it will be impossible for me to just watch it any longer. When you come to that point, then you can say, okay, I'll move, but I'm going to move with complete and total awareness. And that also helps to calm the body, because the body doesn't just, there's itch, and then you move. Or, sometimes what happens, you're sitting and in the back, and so you say, and if you keep doing that, it will never, but if you just, okay, I feel that, and just wait as long as you can, it will often go away. If it doesn't go away, then instead of going like this, you just go, okay, there, now straighten back up. Say, okay.
Practice Qigong, you inhale to the belly, stomach, and then hold it and exhale.
That's a good thing to do, but at a different time.
Use it in the meditation.
No.
Not this.
Your body is naturally restless, naturally wants to move. If you keep letting it move, even taking deep breaths and things like that, if you keep letting it move, it'll never calm down.
Thank you.
The other thing, like a second group, regarding the feeling. Mm-hmm. The feeling, the perception, you have a joy, you have happiness, and this steps enter to the first jhana.
The joy and the happiness comes before, but they're jhana factors. And so when they come, if you want to practice jhana, you develop the joy and the happiness. But it does, when the joy and happiness comes, it doesn't mean that you're
already. So means everybody, even beginner, this part is naturally come out, or you need to practice, like train yourself to be joy.
Well, it's both. The joy comes naturally. Then, as you quiet your mind and learn to be focused, the joy naturally to come up. But you can also cultivate that joy, and it's very helpful. When a beginner is meditating, if they don't have joy, it's very hard to meditate.
That's true.
They feel like, oh, this is hard work.
Yes.
Oh, I don't want to do this. I'm not any good at this. Instead, if they're joyful and relaxed, they say, oh, okay, this is a very nice thing to do. So right from the very beginning, you deliberately try to, when you're sitting there and you say, oh, this feels really nice, then that's good thought, and let that joy be there. But as you go along and the mind becomes more unified, the joy starts to come much, much stronger by itself.
First, she told me, say, one thought come out from her mind, and she feel very joyful.
Yeah.
I asked her, so what thought that you feel comfortable, so joy? Then she said, when she went to the restroom, and then she sit there and she feel Frida is so kind and do a lot of things, and she feel joyful.
Well, that's very good.
How much I rejoice.
Delight for doing that.
Yeah,
For Dharma teaching, I think that's kind of a happiness. Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
But what's really, it's just, he trains himself to be sensitive to pleasure. And what this is reminding us, and what the meditation teaches us, is that joy and happiness, the inside, not from outside. Oh, I need this, or I have joy because of that. Become sensitive to joy. We discover that the joy comes from inside, and there's joy no matter what is happening. It can be naturally you want to share it.
Yeah. She said that joy seems like energy comes through the whole body and very fast penetrate the whole body, and it's gone. She told me the energy like a vibration, whole body is very strong. But yesterday she felt that it's like particle energy.
Let's see, when this word here that we said joy, and here it says rapture. It's a word in Pali, piti, and it includes not just the joy, but it includes that energy. That energy is part of it. And so earlier on here, it says he trains himself sensitive to the entire body. When you're doing that part of the meditation, you'll begin to feel the breath in the entire body, even your feet, your hands, everywhere. You just feel the breath. And as you continue on, that feeling of the breath, it becomes energy, like a vibration, and you can feel it moving. And that is that same rapture. What happens with a lot of people, it becomes the vibration becomes very strong, very pleasant, and it just rises right up to the head, and it just, all of the rapture and the happiness comes just right out of that energy. It comes from your concentration. As your mind becomes still, and as you see, your mind has all these different parts, and they don't agree with each other. The one part of your mind wants to do this, and some other part of your mind wants to do that. One part of your mind says, oh good, we're going to sit here and learn to be good meditators. Another part of your mind says, no, let's go watch TV or work in the garden or something, right? When all of your mind comes together and starts to work in harmony, that's when this energy comes up, and that's when the joy and the happiness come, and that's what makes your mind really still and focused too.
Mm-hmm. She say, sometimes it's not during the meditation, sit here in the daily activity, she have that kind of joy, yeah.
Yeah, and that's wonderful when that happens.
That's why when you meditate very well, and then you can bring this situation, this feeling to the daily life.
That's right. Yeah.
Practice.
Sometimes you just get out of bed and you're filled with joy. Oh,
yeah.
you become like Frida. She smiles all the time.
You are breathing every day. I think it's breathing in, breath out. I'm so happy.
Yes, right.
You can breathe, then the whole life is yours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you can breathe, and then everything else is extra.
Right. The other thing is regarding the mind. The 10. The one is satisfy the mind. The other one is steady the mind. satisfied and steady is almost close. It's if you go up to that feel, that state,
Yeah.
then it's automatically come out. Or some it's you can go to that state, and or you can train yourself to that state.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
just like the feeling. That this one is mental, and that is feeling.
Yeah.
It's they separate. Is everybody needed to practice every steps, or only one group is okay? Like body, feeling, and mind. And somebody so sensitive to the feeling, and somebody so I'm sensitive to the mind, and then I just want to practice this part. That is related.
Yes. Well, they are related, but this is describing a whole process, right? And each part of the process you can do at different levels, but they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
So if we just, is it okay we go back a little bit to number 7 and number 8, okay? Okay, so we talked about number 5 and number 6, joy and the pleasure. And then it says number 7, sensitive to mental fabric. But you see, if you become sensitive to joy and happiness, and if you realize that the joy and happiness comes from the mind and not from things outside, then you come to understand that joy and happiness and pleasure, these are mental fabrications. So when you have that understanding that, these come from the mind, they're mental fabrications. And then you become sensitive to all mental fabrications, and you say, okay, sometimes I'm sitting and there's joy. Other times I'm sitting and there's restlessness, Sometimes I'm sitting and there's pleasure, and other times I'm sitting and there's different mental fabrications. So you become sensitive to all of the different kinds of mental fabrications. And that allows you to do number 8, to calm the mental fabrication. All these different kinds of mental fabrications, some are good, some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, and they interfere with the practice. But you see, they're all mental fabrications. Say that, and then I'll talk about them.
So we train ourselves to sensitive to the mind.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you see that all of these things are coming from the mind, the joy, the happiness, the restlessness, discomfort, that everything comes from the mind. Then you become sensitive to the mind. So you turn your attention, not focusing so much on joyness or unhappiness or things like that, but the mind did all this. And now you're sensitive to the mind, and so now you want to, okay, let's make this mind contented, satisfied, fulfilled. So it's not always trying to make different fabrications. Okay?
Thank you. She said, right now I know why I didn't develop myself so quickly, because I'm not mindfulness. I'm not aware.
Yeah, but it's wonderful when you have that mindfulness and you start to see what's happening.
So that's why we go to the next step is mental, sensitive to the mind, and sensitive to the mind. We let them calm down, they train himself, satisfy the mind, and steady the mind. Mm-hmm. So we train themselves to that part.
And in this one here on number 11, the word that's steadying there, that is the same word from samadhi.
Oh, samadhi.
Samadhi.
Uh-huh.
So it also means much more powerful concentration of them.
But this one doesn't talk about the jhana.
Well, now that's what I wanted to tell you about. I said all of these things can happen at different levels. When your concentration is good, you might decide that you want to practice jhanas. And then when you practice jhanas, you become very absorbed into your meditation object because you have very powerful. And the rapture that comes up is extremely strong. And it's accompanied by happiness and pleasure in the body. When you practice the jhanas, when you go into the jhanas, you have the rapture and the happiness together. And then as you go through the jhanas, you separate these. You see, the joy is a different thing from the pleasure. And so you let go of the joy and you focus on the pleasure. And then once you get used to that and you can see it very clearly, you say, Well, this pleasure is a different thing than the mind. So now you move into another jhana, you say, okay, I'll just let go of the pleasure, leave pleasure and pain behind, leave joy and grief behind, and I'll just become aware of the mind that these fabrications come from. And then you're going into a deep jhana. This is also describing what happens when you do jhana practice. So you can keep going through these same things at different levels.
So that's why the jhana have you need entering and then a substance and then emerge from that. So that's different because they needed to know each part, each investigation applied or sustained, and then joy and happiness and single pointed. You needed to know very clearly, and sometimes we emerge from that, and some entering. Every step you needed to clearly understand.
Right.
So that is different from before the assessing concentration, right?
That's right.
After stating the releasing of my things like equanimity.
That's right.
Equanimity, yeah.
The tranquility and
equanimity, both.
That's
okay.
Right.
Yeah. Only the equanimity, but that is not the fourth jhana. No, it's different. This one is you can be that.
Yeah. If you go back and do jhanas, you do these same stages in the jhanas, then it's the equanimity of fourth jhana.
I think it's not easy. I think it's not easy to do that.
Well,
for me.
but it's not easy to jump ahead too much. Mm-hmm. But if you go just one step at a time, it is easy, And I think very often the mistake that people make is they begin to meditate and they want to jump ahead and they want to go too quickly,
So the fourth group regarding this one is more vipassana part, right?
This is the
vipassana part. For instance, like inconstancy, I will breathing focusing on dissipation, but somebody says it's fade away. Like dissipation have two kind of meaning. One is like positive, one is more negative.
Right.
So dissipation more fade away. It's you are greedy, your desire, like you disgusted.
It's a much stronger kind of equanimity. That when you have, before this we have the equanimity that comes from samatha, concentration, and now when we get into the vipassana, we have a much stronger equanimity, so that something that is pleasant or beautiful, we don't want to grasp at it, or something that's unpleasant or painful, we don't want to push it away. We just, we have equanimity. It's dispassion. That's what it means. No passion to grab, passion to put away.
Okay.
A very powerful equanimity. Can I explain something?
Yes.
But these first three groups are about concentration, samatha, and then we change to vipassana. So when you come to number 12, if you've done jhanas, then you have the equanimity of fourth jhana, and even if you haven't done jhana, you have, at this point, whether you do jhanas or not, you have 5 of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So what I mean by that is if you look in here, and in these first ones, you have mindful awareness, sensitive to the body, you've been sensitive to the feeling, sensitive to the mind. Mindful awareness, one enlightenment factor, is very strong. Of course, you have concentration, samadhi, second enlightenment factor, very strong. You have joy, third enlightenment factors. You have, by the time you get to the last ones here, you have tranquility, equanimity. 5 out of 7 enlightenment factors are present to number 12. So when you go to number 13, you take the 5 factors you have and you begin to investigate enthusiasm and diligence, and other 2 enlightenment. So now we move into vipassana by adding 2 more enlightenment factors to what we have.
So sensation,
cause of suffering. Go back and explain. With all 7 factors of enlightenment, you're now invested, and you focus on impermanence. Everything is changing. As a matter of fact, that's all there is change, right? Nothing but change. Now, before this, we already had equanimity of samatha, but now when you see everything is changing, is only change, everything is empty, then you have the equanimity of insight. Insight gives you a new equanimity, which leads to the dispassion. Why should I grasp after what is always changing? And why should I have aversion for what is always changing? When the insight into impermanence leads to the equanimity that allows the dispassion, right?
Okay.
So now you feel like, I don't care about any of this anymore. I'm not going to keep struggling with any of this. Comes the desire to be liberated. I want to be free from all it, to be awakened. I want to be liberated. And so that's where we get to when we get to number 15. I will breathe in, focusing on cessation, end of all this suffering and clinging and desire and aversion.
Thank you. Next will be relinquishment.
Yeah. So here, you see what's happened is this is also the Four Noble Truths. We discover through insight that everything is unsatisfactory.
Yeah.
Everything is dukkha. And we discover that this dukkha is caused by our craving, desire and aversion. And the Buddha told us, let go of those and you'll see that the suffering goes away, and you'll believe that this is true. And that's what he said about the second noble truth. Understand this, and then learn to let go of the craving, and you'll discover that this is true. And so once you've done that, once you have that understanding that comes from doing of the second noble truth, then you desire cessation. You say, I can see, whenever I let go of craving, the suffering goes away. If I could make the craving stop entirely, completely, then I would be liberated. That's the third truth, to realize that complete cessation of craving leads to complete freedom from suffering. And so this is where we have got to right now. Okay? Then, now we're ready to achieve this cessation. You know, we breathe in, breathe out, focusing on cessation. I want this complete relief. But the other thing that the Buddha made us aware of is that craving, desire and aversion is always accompanied by ignorance or delusion. And what is that delusion? We believe that these things are real rather than projections of our mind. And we believe that the self is real. And so the way since wherever there is this delusion, there will always be craving. In order to achieve this perfect cessation, we must eliminate the delusion, and then we can eliminate the craving. So what this last one is talking about, what is relinquishment is, what are we relinquishing? We're relinquishing the attachment to the belief in our mind's projection, and the attachment to our belief in the self, and the attachment to the belief that having these things that we think are real will make the self we think are real happy. This is the same thing as in dependent origination. From craving comes grasping, grasping comes becoming. So relinquishment is the opposite of this. Craving comes to grasping, and grasping comes to becoming. Now we're going to relinquish that, and then we become liberated.
Thank you. So everybody here today, some people maybe it's already entered to the jhana, and somebody maybe the momentary concentration they didn't know. He say William told him regarding the momentary concentration and assessing concentration and the jhana. He wanted to know, possible like must talk about a little bit about the momentary and assessing and the jhana. So what's different of that? And the second part is he said he told him regarding the first jhana. If you go want to enter to the first jhana, there is a kind of the wholesome mind. A wholesome mind needed to develop the wholesome mind. But what's that wholesome mind? Is from here or from where? Okay.
Okay. So two questions. One
Yeah,
is
one is
different kinds
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
concentration, and one is
The wholesome mind,
by
yeah,
entering
the how to
jhana.
develop,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, big question. Okay.
Brief, yeah.
All right. So, what I believe about these different kinds of concentration. First of all, what does concentration mean before we talk about different kinds of it? And concentration means, first of all, that your attention is stable, not constantly moving from one thing to another. So if you have concentration, your attention stays focused on whatever you choose, rather than bouncing around. The second thing about concentration is that, sometimes we're aware of everything at once, but nothing in particular. And sometimes we are focused on something in particular, just one thing, and we leave everything else. And if you don't have concentration, you don't have control over that. You'd like to be concentrated on one thing, but you can't help but be aware of everything else. And of course that makes your attention move too. So to develop concentration means to get to the place where if I need to pay attention to one thing, I can focus on it and I'm not distracted by everything else. I just do one thing. Or if I want to pay attention to something larger, I can pay attention to it, but not be distracted by anything else. So I have, like my eyes are focused on whatever I choose, and they take in either more or less of everything else according to what I choose. So this concentration then allows me to carry out investigation and to gain insight. So this is what concentration is, before I talk about different kind of concentration. Okay. Now, if you have concentration, if you have good concentration, and it's strong, then there are different things you can do. You could become very single-pointed, focused on one thing, and that can allow you to enter jhana. Okay? If your concentration is good, there's another thing that you could do. You could concentrate on each thing that comes up in your mind, and you can watch it. It comes up and it goes away, and then something else comes up and it goes away, and for each thing that you're observing, you're totally concentrated, even though it only lasts for a short period of time, and you move to something else, and you're totally concentrated on that until it's gone, and then you're totally concentrated on something else until that's gone. So the first kind was single-pointed. The second kind is momentary concentration. There is a third kind of concentration where you can, actually there's some other ways of doing both of these things, but there's a third major kind of concentration where you've trained your mind to be perfectly still. Now you make your mind open and spacious, so you're aware of anything and everything, but your mind does not move. This comes up, your mind doesn't move. And that comes up, and your mind doesn't move. Your mind is totally still, and you let thoughts, feelings, sensations just arise and pass away without the mind moving. So these are three different kinds of concentration that you can have. So the only way we can get the kind of concentration that's necessary to do all three of these is to learn to keep the mind focused on one thing until the mind quiets down and the attention stops moving. And that requires that a person practice. And in the beginning, only in the beginning, but in the beginning this seems difficult because the mind wants to move. It's used to moving. So what happens is somebody comes along and they read about momentary concentration. And they say, oh, mind goes to one thing, and it sounds much easier. I like that. That'd be momentary concentration. Learning to have my mind fixed on one thing sounds like too much work. Momentary concentration sounds a lot easier. But it's impossible. You cannot be completely focused on this, and then the next thing, and the next thing in your ordinary mind, because you'll try to do that, and your mind just goes off by itself. and you're not able to be completely focused on one thing. Your mind is just jumping around. Now, what will happen if you try hard enough, long enough, to have momentary concentration? You will eventually get it, if you're lucky, if you live long enough. And when you do, you'll be able to stay on one thing as long as you want. Because you can't have momentary concentration until you have concentration. And when you have concentration, it can be momentary, or it can be single-pointed, or it can be spacious and open. So you have to have concentration before you have the different kinds of concentration. But people don't understand this. They say, oh, momentary sounds easy. But the thing is, momentary concentration, it's not a good way to describe it, because it's not the concentration that's momentary, because the concentration is always. It's the object that's momentary. The object arises and passes away, but the concentration is always the same. The other kind of concentration, the open, spacious awareness, where the mind is still, but you let everything come in. Some people, same thing. They'll hear about that and they'll say, oh, sounds much easier. I like that better. Okay, I'll just sit here and let my mind go where it wants. Body, sounds, thoughts, where, And the same thing, it sounds easy, but it's no different than, there's no concentration in that. Because you need to develop the concentration first before you can have open awareness. What's valuable, if you develop the concentration, then you can practice open awareness, and what happens, you're watching the mind, and so you come to understand the mind. You see when the mind moves, and you see when the mind is still, and you see when some thought or some sensation or some perception arises in the mind, and it passes away in the mind, because you're open and but your mind is still. If I want to see everything that's happening here, if I look in one place and keep my eye there, anything, I saw her hands move, I see her nod, keep my eye in one place, I can see everything, because my eye stays still. But if when she moves her hand, I go over here, I won't see her nod her head. Right? So, open awareness requires stillness of mind. Your mind cannot be moving when you have open awareness. That's why you need to develop concentration first. So I'm glad you asked this question, because people misunderstand, and because they think, oh, I don't want to do all that work to develop single-pointed concentration. They think, momentary sounds easy. Open awareness sounds easy. But it goes nowhere.
Should be, in the beginning, you needed to know the object and to know concentrate first. We're very appreciated today. It's kind of a fulfillment. It's really enjoyable.
Wow.
This is a wonderful thing in the world.
It's wonderful. I really enjoyed this conversation, this discussion. And it's so good because you ask such good questions.
Yeah, so that's good. So we will continue to study and work hard, and next time we'll probably have a new question come up.
The knowledge is the finger that points the direction, but the experience is when you go in that direction.